You know that warm, fulfilling feeling that comes when you help someone? When you fix a friend's problem, listen to their pain, or stay up late supporting a partner who's falling apart. It feels noble, right? Like proof that you're a good person. But here's the counterintuitive truth. Sometimes, helping others non-stop isn't generosity. It's emotional avoidance in disguise. Yeah, you heard that right. What if your kindness has become a way to run from your own chaos? Picture this. You're exhausted, anxious, and yet, you keep saying yes. You check on everyone else while your own world quietly crumbles. You tell yourself you're just being there, but deep down, there's that creeping emptiness, the quiet echo of self-neglect. This is where helping others burnout and compassion fatigue sneak in, turning empathy into emotional exhaustion. It's not that you don't care, it's that you've forgotten how to care for yourself. Today we're going to unravel why so many of us fall into this trap, why people-pleasing becomes a trauma response, why empathy fatigue feels like love, and why healing means learning to set emotional boundaries, even when it feels selfish. Because the truth is, being everyone's hero can be the perfect disguise for avoiding your own pain. But once you understand this pattern, you can start turning that same compassion inward. And that's when real healing begins. So, when does helping stop being love and start being avoidance? Today you'll find out. The hidden trap of endless giving. There's a moment when helping stops being kindness and starts becoming a form of self-neglect. It's subtle. You don't even notice it happening. You begin saying yes automatically, volunteering before anyone asks, offering your time, your energy, your peace. At first it feels good. You feel needed, useful. But slowly the warmth fades and turns into emotional burnout. You start feeling drained, maybe even resentful, but you keep pushing through because deep down, you believe that if you stop helping, you'll stop being loved. This pattern isn't random, it's a trauma response. Somewhere in your past, you might have learned that being helpful was the only safe way to exist. Maybe you grew up soothing everyone else's emotions just to avoid conflict or rejection. That's codependency in disguise, and it wears the mask of selflessness. You might even laugh it off. I just like helping people. But inside, you're tired. Mentally, emotionally, spiritually. It's the classic caregiver burnout, the silent exhaustion that comes when empathy turns into obligation. And yet, there's this twist. Helping others too much can actually become a way to avoid facing your own feelings. Instead of sitting with your anxiety, your guilt, your grief, you drown them out by fixing someone else's problems. It feels noble, but it's actually emotional avoidance. Think about it. When was the last time you asked yourself, "What do I need today?" That question feels uncomfortable, doesn't it? But it's exactly where your healing journey begins. And that discomfort? It's not punishment. It's the invitation that leads us straight into what comes next. When empathy turns into exhaustion. At first, empathy feels like a gift. Your ability to sense what others feel, to comfort, to fix. But when it goes unchecked, it becomes empathy fatigue. You start carrying emotions that don't belong to you. You absorb other people's pain like a sponge until there's no room left for your own. That's how therapist burnout, nurse burnout, and people-pleaser psychology quietly creep in. You tell yourself you're strong enough to handle it all, but your body disagrees. The headaches, the tension, the constant mental exhaustion, those are all warning lights flashing red. Here's the irony. People who struggle the most with emotional burnout are often the ones who think they don't have the right to rest. They confuse rest with selfishness and quiet with laziness. But that's a cognitive distortion, a trick of the mind that tells you your worth depends on how much you give. Think of it like running a car non-stop without refueling. You may keep going for a while, but eventually, even the strongest engine breaks down. And unlike machines, humans don't just need gas, they need emotional oxygen, stillness, solitude, and self-compassion. A practical way to start breaking this cycle: schedule emotional boundaries like appointments. Seriously, put do nothing on your calendar. When a friend calls in crisis, ask yourself, do I have the capacity right now? That simple pause is a form of mindfulness for burnout. You're not abandoning them, you're honoring yourself. Because when you protect your own peace, you're actually offering more authentic support. And here's where things get interesting. Sometimes, the reason it's so hard to set those boundaries isn't just habit, it's rooted in something much deeper. The emotional armor we mistake for love. You know that feeling when you're always the strong one, the reliable friend, the fixer, the therapist of the group? On the surface, it looks like love, but underneath, it's often emotional detachment disguised as care. You've learned to connect by solving, not by feeling. You're comfortable with other people's chaos because it distracts you from your own. That's what psychologists call avoidant coping, the art of looking outward when what really needs attention is inward. It's not malice, it's survival. Many people pleasers grew up in homes where their emotions didn't feel safe, so they became masters at reading others instead. That's where the trauma and empathy link begins. The overdeveloped empathy becomes both shield and prison. You start believing your job is to fix, soothe, rescue, because if everyone else is okay, maybe you'll finally feel safe too. But the truth? That strategy creates a quiet loneliness. You might find yourself surrounded by people yet feeling emotionally numb. That's not connection. That's emotional avoidance dressed up as purpose. The healing begins when you realize that love doesn't mean carrying someone else's pain. It means walking beside them, not inside them. Setting boundaries isn't rejection, it's intimacy with clarity. Try this. Next time someone vents, instead of offering solutions, just say, "That sounds really hard. How are you holding up?" You'll be amazed at how that simple shift deepens real connection without draining you. Because the moment you start showing up differently, you begin rewriting your story. And that story takes us to something even more revealing, the hidden guilt behind letting go. The guilt that keeps you trapped in overgiving. Here's the sneaky thing about guilt. It disguises itself as responsibility. When you finally try to say no, that wave of anxiety and guilt hits like a punch in the gut. You feel selfish for choosing yourself. That's not coincidence. It's conditioning. Over time, people-pleasing trains your nervous system to equate self-care with danger. You feel safe only when others are happy. That's why even thinking about boundaries can trigger anxiety and guilt. But that guilt isn't moral. It's a leftover trauma response trying to keep you from abandonment. This emotional trap shows up everywhere. The mom who never rests because she feels lazy if she's not serving everyone. The employee who takes on extra work out of fear of disappointing the boss. The friend who listens to endless drama while quietly falling apart inside. These are symptoms of chronic stress, self-neglect, and overgiving, not loyalty. It's the psychology of helping turned against itself. When your worth depends on being needed, you unconsciously create situations that drain you just to feel valuable. That's codependency at its finest. So, how do you break free? Start by forgiving yourself for the guilt itself. That's the first act of self-compassion. Then, practice what I call micro-boundaries. Tiny, manageable steps like not answering messages immediately or giving yourself permission to rest even if someone else is disappointed. These small acts are powerful mental health tips for burnout recovery, because every time you choose peace over guilt, you're healing that inner child who learned that love must be earned. And that healing opens the door to something transformative, rediscovering who you are beyond the helper. Returning home to yourself. When helping others becomes a habit, you can forget what it means to simply be. You've built your identity around being useful, supportive, strong. But what if strength also means softness? What if healing isn't about doing more, but feeling more? That's the heart of emotional healing and inner child healing. Learning to sit with yourself without needing to fix or prove anything. It's about trading perfectionism for presence, burnout for balance, and realizing that your worth was never tied to how much you give. This is where spiritual healing for burnout begins. It's not about grand rituals or disappearing to a mountain retreat, though that sounds tempting. It's about small, sacred acts of self-care for helpers. Taking a quiet walk without your phone, journaling your emotions without judgment, saying, "I need time to rest," and actually meaning it. These aren't luxuries, they're lifelines. Because healing trauma doesn't happen through control, it happens through surrender. The moment you stop running from yourself, you discover that the peace you were offering everyone else was meant for you too. And here's the beautiful twist. When you start giving from overflow instead of emptiness, your help becomes purer. You no longer rescue, you empower. You no longer fix, you accompany. That's the real psychology of helping. Love with boundaries, empathy with wisdom. This is the healing journey of turning compassion inward so it can radiate outward. Because at the end of the day, helping others isn't the problem. It's forgetting yourself in the process. And now that you see the difference, the real work of coming home to yourself can finally begin. So let's pause for a second. How much of your kindness has been genuine care, and how much has been a quiet escape from yourself? It's not an accusation, it's an invitation. Because now you know that helping others burn out, compassion, fatigue, and people-pleasing aren't signs of weakness. They're signs of a heart that's carried too much for too long. You've learned that healing isn't about giving less, it's about giving differently, with boundaries, with awareness, with self-compassion. The next time you feel that pull to fix someone's pain, take a breath. Ask yourself, am I showing up to help them or to avoid myself? That simple question can shift your entire healing journey. Start with small, radical acts of self-care, saying no without guilt, resting without apology, allowing yourself to feel joy without earning it first. Because when you nurture your own peace, you stop rescuing people from their storms. You teach them how to find shelter too. Now I want to ask you, what would your life look like if you treated yourself with the same tenderness you offer everyone else? How would your relationships change if you helped from wholeness, not exhaustion? If this message stirred something inside you, take it as a sign. Your healing has already begun. And hey, if this resonated with you, don't keep it to yourself. Subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and keep walking with me on this path of emotional healing, mindfulness for burnout, and rediscovering who you are beyond the helper. Because the world doesn't just need your kindness, it needs your wholeness.